Welcome back to the 2014 World Series of Poker Main Event Final Table telecast presented by Gentleman Jack. Back inside the raucous Penn and Teller Theater, and what a gift the players gave everybody as we ended that last level. Kings up versus the bottom end of the straight and all in and the forced fold, and everyone had plenty of time to talk about it, Antonio.
That was something else. I did not see that coming. And, you know, I think 10 million would have done the same thing. Imagine that he actually got called with a queen there. It would have been bad news bears. But, hey, he won the pot. He's out there, and I'm in here. And
he's back in the chip lead, Von Hof. As we take a look at our main event summary so far, everyone battling for, well, right now, 8th place, but 10 million for first. Mark Newhouse looking at back-to-back final tables, and he actually has done it, Norman. 6 nations represented here at this final table, and Von Hof could become the first ever from the Netherlands to win the bracelet.
And actually, this is back-to-back for the Netherlands, making the main event final table. Last year, Michiel Grimmelhaus was here, and now this year, Mr. Von Hof.
The blinds are up now to 250,500. That graphic is incorrect, and then we have a 50K ante. The blinds are up.
The blinds being up, that means that our short stack, Martin Jacobson, is down to 25 big blinds. First time someone's been under 30 big blinds at this final table.
Yeah, if you fold 9 hands, you lose 1.2 million chips. That's a lot. It's starting to get pretty significant.
Politano started as the short stack. He is in 8th place, 15.4 million. But Von Hof, the top dog once again with over 40 million, the first to crack that 40 million chip barrier. Folded around to Felix Stevenson, born in Oslo. He, an online specialist, lives in London as well. Pocket trays raised to 1.1 million, and usually that first raise is the one that sets the standard for raising the rest of the way during this level. We'll see if that exactly is the case. Will Tonking.
On day one, Tonking was down to 8,000. You start with 30,000 chips. He got down to 8K pretty quickly, but steadied himself. And actually all 7 days of this main event, he was at 20 big blinds or less at some point of that day. But he kept coming back up, and just had, you couldn't rattle him, and he just kept coming back up and building a stack.
Mark Newhouse, the only one of these November Niners to finish his day one with a smaller starting stack than he started. Actually finished in 29,000 plus, but he managed to persevere and came to this final table with the 3rd biggest stack, 26 million. Tonking with pocket kings and a re-raise to 3 million even. Back to Stevenson.
Well, we've heard from Tonking from day 7 on. He brings something to the party.
He really
when he gets
does.
into a pot, he has had some really big hands.
He definitely has a lot of built-up squeezer vig. He can definitely use that in the future.
So Stevenson knows what Tonking is about, and he does give up his trays, and so Tonking will be stacking some newly won ammunition.
People are not giving up a lot of chips easily at this final table.
And what a rush Will Tonking is really on. Coming to 10-handed play as the short stack, and now with the 5th biggest stack with just 9 players left, just under 20 million for New Jersey's Will Tonking. 4 chips in play. You like to have a lot of those red ones, 500,000 each they're worth. $250,000 for the beige ones, the purple ones, lavender, 100,000, and the green chips were 25,000 each. And maybe you can get a good look at those oversized red chips. And one reason they're oversized is so a player doesn't, accidentally reach for a smaller chip. They'll feel the size difference, and just because it's fun to have bigger chips too.
It's like those big plaques when you play overseas, and they give you those big plaques. Norman, I'm sure you've never seen one, but they're bigger and they have more weight.
Wow. I got to give Antonio a lot of credit for his final table strategy here, because he does it mostly from memory. It's been so long since he's made a final table.
Wow.
I deserved it.
Well, you keep hitting me right in my gut.
Set yourself up there. Folded to Stevenson once again, who now has 33 million chips after giving up a few in that last hand. Pocket sevens now for Stevenson, coming off pocket trays, now pocket sevens. And again, the raise to 1.1 million. Tonking gives up his hand. Newhouse call with King Jack. Stevenson gets a customer in Newhouse, who loves to see flops, if at all possible. Got over cards, hoping that Stevenson has pretty much what he has, a small pocket pair, and Stevenson can get a hand. That's pretty much out flopping the sevens. Kings up.
Yeah, it's great that Newhouse flopped top two, obviously, but it's not good for him that his opponent is going to get away from it pretty easily. Stevenson just kind of completely whiffed the flop. 3 overcards is never any good.
At this main event, it seems like Mark Newhouse hasn't seen a flop he hasn't liked. Boy, a lot of flops have hit him.
Isn't that true?
It's been amazing.
Kings up, does bet.
Yeah, Flaney needs that though.
Yeah, Stevenson's not going to get crazy out of line here with an underpair to the flop out of position. So.
And Stevenson will fold, and Mark Newhouse will collect some chips. And Newhouse keeping himself in very good position. LA, Las Vegas-based poker pro, back-to-back November 9er, 2 years in a row. Beat a lot of odds to get here. One of these days, you're going to have to admit it. He made back-to-back final tables, Norm.
And he'd give a lot of the credit there to Huck Seat and Joe Cassidy, because they got him back on the straight and narrow. He met Joe Cassidy first at the Borgata in Atlantic City. Joe introduced him to Huck. They both taught him pretty much that when he had no money, he had to just go back to basics, go back to a $40 no-limit game. He didn't always have to play in the biggest game in town. And so he figured that out. He also figured out how to sort of cure some of the leaks he had in his life. And he's been more on the straight and narrow. And thankfully, the big cash last year helped him pay back some debts. And now a big cash here, and he'd be free and clear for a long time.
Mark's second cash ever recorded in tournament play was a $1.5 million score, winning a WPT championship. And he's very open about saying he was not a poster child for money management at that time.
That $1.5 million was gone within a year.
Easy come, easy go. It's really hard as a poker player when you hit a big score to protect it.
I've never had that problem, so it's never been easy come.
I didn't have to say it.
He wanted to save you the breath. Sindelar gets rid of 4 trade. Jacobson will take it in the big blind. He got a walk. Queen tray suited. Jacobson has not been heard from very much. He really does have to mind his P's and Q's as the short stack now, with just over 13 million, and any chips are welcome into the Swede stack. And I talked to a lot of the poker pros around who are, you know, a big question all around here for a long time is who do you have? Who do you have? And it's always, well, if he had more chips, I'd take Jacobson. And he just has not been able to get any traction since he was on the losing end of day 7. Chip leader of the entire main event after day 6, and coming into day 7, things did not go right for him.
Yeah, but it reminds you of David Benefield last year. A lot of the pros said if David Benefield, the short stack, ever gets chips, fear him. I agree with you. A lot of the pros thinking that Martin Jacobson gets chips, you're going to have to fear him.
So Von Hof comfortable once again. He lost the chip lead temporarily and came back with a move that will be talked about a long time at the end of that first level, putting Larabe all in, and Rabe snap folding this small straight he had. Newhouse with a raise with Queen 9 of hearts to an even million, and Dan Sindelar wants to play with 10-9 of spades.
Bruno has waited this long. He has entered the pot.
He's getting a good price. He's got to call $500,000. There's so much money out there.
The price went up while he was waiting.
Yeah.
So three-handed action. Yeah. A couple of hearts out there. Jack high. So Politano does manage to get the best of it there.
Mark Newhouse with a straight flush draw.
Yep. Queen 9 of hearts, though, is favored at this point. And with the bigger, with the only flush draw, sorry.
Sindelar with an up and down straight draw. All of them with a piece of that flop.
This is a tough spot for Politano. He's got top pair. There's two other players in the pot, but he's the short stack. I mean, you don't really want to. It's kind of tough if you call here. There's so many cards on the turn where you just kind of have to check, give up. You know, it's one of those spots where, wow.
And Politano does get out of the way. We've seen him make some very interesting folds throughout this main event.
I mean, I don't love his position, but you can't just fold top pair there. There's just, your hand just has too much value, especially given that Newhouse led the flop and his opponent just called the flop. I mean, I don't know.
Well, he has tried to stay out of trouble late in the main event, and he doesn't want to put himself in difficult positions. You talked about a lot of cards would come off on the turn that would really be problematic for him.
It's a tough spot. You know, again, if Newhouse had a pair of queens, obviously it would look genius, but I think that in the long run, if you're just flopping top pair and folding it, it's a little too exploitable.
So queen high is best here for Newhouse as a blank comes out on the river, and Sindelar finds it within him to bet that river, and Newhouse has to get rid of it. Well done, Dan Sindelar.
I mean, that was, he couldn't win with a 10 high, so he's got to stab the river. Newhouse, kind of gave up the pot once he didn't get there, and it was Sindelar's time to take it.
Dan Sindelar from Nebraska up to third place with $27.8 million. Went to the University of Nebraska briefly, and some of the famous Cornhuskers in the world. Johnny Carson,
my favorite Cornhusker of all time.
Absolutely. Warren Buffett's still around making some good investments.
If he returned my phone calls, he'd be my favorite Cornhusker of all time.
Of course, Tom Osborne.
Nebraska football, don't get me started.
And Dan Sindelar trying to become one of the richer Cornhuskers around.
Yeah, he was there for 2 years after he was introduced to online poker. His sophomore year, he either stopped going to class or he would sit in class playing online poker. At the University of Maryland, I think you can get a degree sitting in class playing online poker.
You got to look at part of his crowd. I believe that was his dad, who is a weightlifting champion. Is the only guy up there that I could see that maybe could lift, several hundred pounds.
Working the farm, he's in good shape for many, many years.
Very good shape. Larabe with queens calls the raise of Van Hofs. Van Hof with king 10, and just a call from Larabe with the big premium pocket pair.
I mean, I love this play. Sometimes it comes to kind of kick you in the butt for making it, but nobody knows what you have. You have position on the bigger stack. You can control the size of the pot. It's very tricky, and I like it.
Politano
in the tank.
In the tank.
What do you know?
And the last time we saw him, you got a feel for what the rest of the table is feeling when he's going through his machinations there. I mean, it seems a lot longer when you're just sitting there waiting for them. He does give it up. Pappas now in the big blind. Again, the blind's at 250,000, 500,000. So Billy already with $500,000 invested.
So the feature on him playing foosball. Billy says, frankly, there's not enough money in foosball. The best player in the world makes $30,000 a year.
A year.
In foosball.
It's hard to believe. The best player in the world makes $30,000 a year. That's
Billy's the best player in the world. He would know.
This is why all foosball and backgammon players eventually come to poker.
All right, Billy calls with 7-6 suited. And the queens are best for Larabe after the flop.
So this one, I think Van Hof will continuation bet, just because it's more likely that his opponents don't have much. He clearly can't see that Larabe has queens. Maybe he can, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Nice check. I mean, especially after Larabe, he just called with the queens pre-flop, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So far, Van Hof's poker detector has been very strong.
Larabe got to bet his queens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Billy Pappas with that Yoshi card protector, that Yoshi hat. Says Yoshi's always been one of his favorite characters, a character from the Nintendo game Super Mario Brothers originally. Yoshi actually ended up with his own video game that the Mario Brothers appear in, just so you know. And the hat wasn't even his. It belonged to a foosball friend of his, and she gave it to him at one point and said, make it work.
It's making it work.
Pappas folds. And on Hope folds as well. Larabe will take that 5.9 million chip pot with the pocket queens, and you love it when pocket queens hold up.
It's tough to get extra chips out of these players today. We're seeing some solid folds, nobody out of line. It's still been pretty snug through 40-odd hands.
All right, Tuesday night on ESPN, we will crown a world champion. One of these 9 players will win $10 million and a very precious gold bracelet. 9 o'clock Eastern on ESPN, 6 o'clock here on the West Coast. And you see the $10 million first place prize is more than 6 times what Johnny Chan made at his 3 straight main event final tables, 2 wins and 1 second place.
And that's an incredible achievement. But again, with the asterisk, those fields all under 200 players. You know, right now, this event, you lose 200 players, you got 6,400 left. You lose 200 players, you got 6,200 left, and so on. It was a different game back then.
That's what you lose, you know, maybe every hour sometimes when it starts, especially when the money bubble bursts. You know, you start shedding players so quickly in the main event. All right, fold it around to Martin Jacobson, the short stack right now. 1 million, he says. Minimum raise from the short stack with a suited king.
So Jacobson wouldn't do this if Politano wasn't playing pretty snug on his left. Politano has been playing very careful, folding some, you know, marginal hands, and Jacobson is very aware of that.
Pocket 10's a famous hand for the Politano fans. That was the hand he folded, as I mentioned, when we were 10-handed, and Luis Velador was going to eventually be eliminated on.
And Bruno says that was actually a very easy fold for him in last hand, particularly with Mark Newhouse behind him. It might have been a flip, he thought, and he told Bernard Lee on the Bernard Lee Poker Show that I don't flip my dream. So he was on that bubble. He's going to play it a little snug, gave up the 10s. He would have ended up being the one who knocked out Luis Velador, as it turned out, and had a lot more chips. But that was part of his mentality. He just wasn't going to flip his dream.
And the 2 shortest stacks now putting chips into the pot. Politano re-raises to just over $2.5 million.
Yeah, I like re-raising here on the button. It looks a little bit more suspicious. Flatting with 10s on the button to a late position raiser, you know, it could not go your way after the flop. So I like just raising here, and if he gets re-raised, I'm pretty sure he's going to go with it.
If he does get re-raised, it would be our first 4-bet of this final table.
Yeah, I mean, Jacobson is never going to 4-bet here with King 3. I mean, he's just too solid and too careful to do that.
Even with the read he's got on Politano.
Yeah, I mean, Politano's been playing pretty snug, so especially
but
given
I mean,
that read.
In the shows leading up to this, they saw Politano fold to pressure a number of times, but Politano knows that as well, so it goes both ways.
Right.
And there is the fold, and another good play from Martin Jacobson. And King Trey, not all that to sing about, but pocket 10s certainly are for Politano and his crowd right now. Politano moving up to 7th place as Jacobson remains the short stack. Dan Sindelar, the Nebraskan, the Cornhusker, in 3rd place now with just under 28 million. We're still 9-handed at the final table. Welcome back to Las Vegas. And there you see the high roller in the background, the newest attraction near the Strip here in Las Vegas. But the real action right now happening inside the Rio, the Penn and Teller Theater, where Jort Van Holt is once again the chip leader, sitting with over 38 million chips. And you take a look at the predictor of success for the chip leader as they come into the final table, and it's not a predictor of success, really, Norman.
No, it's actually a predictor of not winning As Duhamel, the only one of those last 6 who was able to go from the chip lead at the final table to the championship.
But you got to say one thing about the chip leader. If you're one of these guys who's sitting down there, it almost guarantees third place money, and that's a lot of money, Antonio.
A lot of dough.
Von Hof enjoying his time.
3.8 million. First place, $10 million.
$10 million.
You don't get a chance to play for $10 million.
Who wins $10 million, huh? At least, or $18 million.
Antonio
nice.
won $18 million. That's still it's just a craw on my side if you have a craw on your side. Because he won $18 million again. Who was the field? There was a Belgian businessman. There's a guy who had a string of car washes, and there was somebody else, I think, from Antarctica.
That's about it.
That was about it.
So Von Hof will take it with Jack Trey and the Rays. Our chip leader knew he was in good shape coming into this final table, and if you're going to be at the table, why not be the chip leader and be confident?
Most people I speak to understand that being the chip leader alone isn't enough. So what I hear from a lot of people is you're the chip leader and you're a good player, so you've got this. So that feels a lot better than just being the chip leader.
He got the chip lead with a fabulous day 7. He knocked out Dan Smith in 20th with a pocket 4s against Ace-King coin flip where he almost doubled up. Then he knocked out Andrei Zaichenko in 17th where he flopped a straight with 10-6 to crack his pocket aces. And then he knocked out Eddie Sabat in 16th when he rivered nut flush and Eddie rivered jack high flush. 3 huge hands, 3 big knockouts, and he's the chip leader.
And he never really had a big stack until that last day. On day 4, he had 131,000 chips. And the next day, 3.9 million. That really lit the rocket on Van Hof and his main event. And of course, he came into this final table with 38 million. He's got just a little bit more than that right now. Larabe with pocket 5s and a raise to $1 million. Van Hof will not play, and the patented flick of a chip from Mr. Newhouse, and he's in the pot. 4-7 jack. I'm sorry, 6-7 jack. We know that Mark Newhouse has a 4 and with an 8. Okay, not now. Sorry, the card reader having a little problem here. Pocket 8s for Newhouse against the 5s of Larabe. Unless Mark broke one of those 8s in half. He did break one of these chips during main event play during summertime, and they're a little thicker with the RFID reader in them. And he said he just peeked it, looked at it, and the chip broke in half lengthwise.
Look at that turn card.
Wow, a 5 of hearts, and Larabe hits a set.
And Newhouse picks up a straight, by the way, and he still has second pair to the flop.
Straight draw.
Yeah, he picks up a straight draw, and he's got second pair to the jack. So this is a really good action card on the turn. Newhouse will probably check, and Larabe has to bet here with a steady. He's really not worried about, he could be worried about 8-9, but that's not going to stop him from betting.
And it shouldn't. Larabe picking up a Mark Newhouse-like turn card.
That's the way Larabe's night has been going. Picking up cards here and there, but not a lot of traction. Still under 20 million.
There's almost nothing sweeter than when you bet the flop and turn a set. It is one of the greatest feelings in poker. You just can't believe it came.
You want to hit it on the flop. That's what you're going for. 2.5 million, about half the pot, and Mark Newhouse with the call. 5 of those red chips. King of clubs. So, set of 5s for Larabe. His best. Newhouse checks his 8s.
So, I mean, he has to bet here. He knows for sure he's got the best hand. He didn't get raised on the turn. He's not worried about 3 kings or 3 jacks. He would have heard about that earlier. So, there's 9.9 million in the pot. He has to think to himself, what is Newhouse potentially going to call? Newhouse might have a 7. He might just have a jack. Unlikely he has a 2 pair. So he probably wants to bet an amount that he gets paid from. In my mind, maybe 2.8, 2.9 million. I don't think that Newhouse is capable of calling much more, given that he just check called 2 streets. If I'm sitting in Larabe's seat, I have no idea what Newhouse has. I'm putting him on a 1 pair kind of hand.
And the science of bet sizing, too small is suspicious. Too big, you're not going to get called. I mean,
right, it's an art.
There's an art to it.
It's an art, for sure. You know, and you know, if Larabe fires, Newhouse thinks, well, the king came. What?
Oh, check. Maybe he didn't think he was going to get paid off. I don't know. Is that the only?
I mean,
I
just have no comment there.
Wow.
You know.
Set of fives. He does not bet. Let's go check on the river. But Larabe with that conservative check back.
Extremely conservative.
Well, he's stacking the chips, you know.
Yeah, but that was too conservative. You can't check back a set and hold them. I mean, if this was Omaha, I understand, but
there's value to betting and getting a fold and not showing your hand too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Larabe with 25.1 million now.
I didn't like that.
There you see the top three: Sindelar, Stevenson, Van Hoof. Van Hoof with 39 million. Stevenson in second place with almost 31 million. So he's built a bit of a gap between 1 and 2. Will Tonking won't play, and it is interesting. I thought it was going to be an interesting dynamic, Norman, coming in here with the cash game player, number of cash game specialists versus a couple of tournament specialists versus a couple of amateur guys, and the personalities are all over the board as well. But I thought it was going to be fun to see the cash game guys go up against the tournament guys, and that's always fun to see.
Well, I'm biased towards the cash game guys. I believe they generally have a better understanding of the game, and they can actually adapt to tournaments more than vice versa. Tournament guys don't adapt to cash that well. Do you find it to be the case,
yeah,
Antonio?
That's typically true. Cash game player will, you know, they take the stack size and chip pot control and all those things into play, whereas when a tournament player comes into a cash game, they're just ready to get it all in with ace king for, you know, 100 big blinds, and you can't be a successful cash game player if that's your mentality going in.
Look at Van Hoof, raises from the button with Jack 8 of diamonds, and Sindelar, one of the cash game guys, knows the value of ace 4, and he gives it up. So the chip leader flexing a little muscle there, and that's exactly what you need to do once in a while.
Yeah, that was one of the first light 3-bets that we've seen at this final table so far. You know, he has all the chips. Sindelar is on the tighter side, and so he's going to give up a lot of marginal hands there.
Sindelar with the third biggest stack, 26.3 million. How much does that no money for ninth play into the whole Gestalt dynamic at this point, and especially as the blinds get bigger and bigger, Antonio?
I mean, I don't think anybody is particularly thinking about, specifically thinking about going from, you know, 9th to 8th. It's a $200,000 difference. Yeah, it's nice, but you know, when first place is $10 million, I think that's more on your mind than walking away not getting any more money than you already got. So obviously it's a factor, but I think everybody has their hopes set a little bit higher than just moving up to 8th.
And Mark Newhouse is not thinking about 9th right now, but if he did end up finishing in 9th line, they would have to take him out on a stretcher.
He would be with you in the LA River, on the Sears Tower, the Grand Canyon, I guarantee it. Politano with a raise with pocket 4s.
He said a boatload of pocket
pairs.
pairs.
You said it's hard to make a pair, Antonio.
It is hard to make a pair.
Okay, well, maybe not so hard. Stevenson just calls with the pocket 8s.
Once there's pocket pairs, it increases the chances that other players have pocket pairs mathematically. I know this to be a fact.
I do not have my calculator, but
Of course it does. It's taken. I don't have to explain it to anybody out there who understands the deep analytics that I'm talking about here.
I will give you that one. I'll give you that one.
Politano's in a tough spot here. Stevenson has position on him, and we know that Stevenson likes to play position very strong. Politano's a short stack. He's only got pocket 4, so unless he flops a 4, I don't think he's going to win this pot.
Tonking in the big blind comes along for a discount. Tonking flops top pair. Stevenson with the flush draw. You see all clubs in that flop.
Tonking knows about discounts from the blind. When Martin Jacobson misclicked on the final table big bubble, that allowed Tonking to come in the blind and then flop the nut straight. Here he's flopped top pair, but 3 clubs out there.
Yeah, and 2 players behind him. I mean, if you bet and get called, and you know, there's a lot of scary cards that can peel off on the turn. But again, he's got a lot of built-up squeezer vig meaning that given that he's been playing relatively tight and pretty solid, he can use that to his, to his benefit.
You've taught me another term, Antonio. Squeezer vig. Last time you taught me nutter butter.
Nutter butters.
In Australia, nutter butters. I walk around town all the time telling people I got the nutter butters, and they do run away. But now you taught me squeezer vig. I like that.
Vig. You can use it. You don't even have to give me credit. It's yours.
Oh, no, I give you credit.
So, I don't know what Politano is thinking here.
He's got to give you credit. It's the only way he gets credit himself is by saying, I know Antonio. Sorry, I interrupted your serious analysis.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, this is Hollywood. He's not going to do anything here.
Now Stevenson with the flush draw, pocket eights.
I mean, it's close. He's got a flush draw, but hey, it's not a very good flush draw. Tonking is pretty tight. In the long run, I think folding is the best play.
We've seen some very good folds at this final table. Tonking will stack it once again, and they're just maybe discovering when he's in the pot, you better watch out. Von Hof is our chip leader, over 41 million, as this table tries to eliminate these players one by one and work towards a new world champion. They'll be crowned tomorrow night and earn $10 million. Come on back. Welcome back to the 2014 World Series of Poker Main Event Final Table Telecast, presented by Gentleman Jack. The weather here in Las Vegas has been perfect for anything inside and out. Right now, these 9 players trying to weather the storm and work their way into the role of poker's world champion. Started with 9. We're still 9-handed. The blind's at 250,500 with a 50K ante. New Jersey's Will Tonking right now in 5th place with 22.1 million. And hope you're enjoying our new television format. 30-minute delay with the cards face up. Every time a player enters a pot, you'll be able to see the cards. Our chip leader right now from the Netherlands, Jorrit van Hof. Van Hof, middle position, and a raise. And a raise is to 1.2 million.
Ace bluff, man. Sorry? Ace bluff. Thank you.
So you heard Larabe talking to Von Hof, and apparently the knowledge of Von Hof's big all-in move at the end of the first level has gotten to the Spaniard.
Everybody sees the hands.
Yeah,
it's different. It's different.
Yeah.
Von Hof with a raise with Queen 4 suited, and so that we've talked about it a lot, Antonio, but to have the knowledge out there of what players played earlier, as long as it's a level playing field, the more you see it, you still agree with it and you're okay with it, and as long as everybody knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think just for the sake of poker and the fact that it's on ESPN and the growth of our sport, I think that you have to do it. Everybody has the access to the same information, so I think it's completely reasonable and it's fair. And all these guys have someone at home watching the hands, and every break or so, everybody gets to find out what everybody had. So what's wrong with that? If we all have the same information, it's an even battlefield.
Talking with a 3-bet to over 3 million with Ace-Jack. So Von Hof now, the original raiser.
Von Hof has a lot of confidence at this final table, even before the final table started. Now he's, he knows that everybody saw him make that massive bluff. It worked. He's been making good decisions, so he feels that he can maybe start running over the table just a little bit, hence why opening with Queen 4 suited and things like that. He's the chip leader. I don't mind that play at all. It just didn't work out, and you can't be results oriented. A lot of times you get no calls.
Will Tonking with the better hand makes a 3-bet and takes it. As you see, he's in for a little punishment following the Mets, Knicks, and Rangers being from the East Coast. Some of the tweets out there coming in. Andrew Feldman from ESPN. He's loving reading the comments about ESPN, and certainly Jorrit's all in earlier on. Some hated it. Some think he's great. Some think he's terrible. Par for the course. Main event final table is live, and they're showing hole cards. What a time to be alive, indeed.
Oh, it was great to be alive during the Renaissance.
Ryan Reese, the defending champion, says, I'm excited. It was nice to see Ryan in a beautiful suit, dressed up real nice tonight to give us the shuffle up and deal.
Yeah, he should be excited. He won the World Championship. He walks around with a smile all day. What a great kid.
Stevenson with a raise to 1.1 million with ace 10. Von Hof makes the call with pocket queens. Worked for Larabe earlier. He just limped in with the queens and took a pot down. So Van Hof trying to go under the radar a little bit with that premium hand. Short stack. Jacobson, 27-year-old London-based Swede.
He was the chip leader after day 1A. Joe Cata was the chip leader after day 1C and went on to win the whole thing.
Jacobson folds. Flop. King, 10. So a pair of 10s for Stevenson, but still coming up short to the queens of Von Hof.
Yeah, I mean, neither player is really going to get too out of line on this flop. They both have hands that have a lot of showdown value. And so, you know, there'll probably be 1 or 2 bets here and there, but both players are very, you know, worried about the 2 kings out there. Obviously, if one of their opponents has a king, they're in big trouble, and they both have a good hand. So
as soon as he reached for chips, I was about to ask you, in No Limit Hold'em, is it too much of an automatic response for people to check a paired board just automatically? Or is that the right way to go?
You don't, you don't.
I know the reasons why you don't want to get involved in the pot, but
right. But with ace 10, you have a hand that can obviously win, and so what you don't want to do is bet and then get raised and have to call 2 more streets. You're going to put yourself in trouble. So when you have a hand that actually can win at the end, you kind of want to play it slow.
And there is the call from Stevenson. And so oftentimes on a paired board with that 3rd card out there, if you paired that, you generally like your hand, but you are cautious, I guess, if you're Stevenson, especially Von Hof now with the the bigger pair, I should say, the queens.
I think, you know, Von Hof can go either way here. You know, there's many reasons why betting is okay. There's also reasons why checking is okay. He's got the 2nd flush draw. He has a pair of queens and kings. There's not really too many bad cards for him. It shows some weakness. If he checks, he might, you know, get paid off on the later street. He also doesn't want to play a massive pot, but he does have position. He does have the big chip stack. And Stevenson showed some weakness by check calling the flop. So to maximize your value, you're supposed to bet here. But with the 2 kings out there, yeah, it's close.
2.9 million from Yorit.
Both these guys, pot limit Omaha specialists. Both pledged not to play PLO during the break before the November 9. They both happened to go online to play PLO and found the other one also playing online.
Busted.
2 guys having an affair, showing up at the same hotel.
The PLON. Yeah, Stevenson said that with almost an embarrassed sound in his voice when he found out he'd been caught by his buddy.
I'm really curious to see what Stevenson does here. Certainly he didn't love the heart. If he calls here and a blank peels off, I'm really curious to see if Von Hof will go for value with his queens.
Von Hof with such an imposing look at the table. He is almost 6'6" tall. So when he stands up, he's even more imposing, but he just has that strong look about him. And there is the flush that comes through on the river for Von Hof as his hand gets better.
Yeah, I mean,
and the ace for Stevenson too. The ace is up. Aces and kings. Sorry, Antonio.
No worries. I mean, he's certainly going to get some value here on the river. You know, he wouldn't love a check raise, but he's definitely not going to check it back. The only thing that beats him, obviously, is a full house. And Stevenson did check call both streets. He's not really worried about a boat, even though that's exactly how he would play it. But really, it's only 10s, king 10. maybe ace-king, but I don't think that Stevenson would have played ace-king like that on the flop. So,
and they do have to be careful with each other. These are the top 2 stacks at the table.
3.4.
And there is the bet of 3.4 million.
Right, and this just, you know, this got pretty ugly for Stevenson, even though he's got 2 pair.
Yeah, the 10 just became a kicker, yeah. So Stevenson now.
So Stevenson is trying to go through the process of what hand could Van Hoof have where he called pre-flop, bet the flop when it was king, king, 10, bet when a heart came on the turn, and then fired again on the river, no problem. You know, certainly he would do it with a hand like queen, jack of hearts, king, 10, but there's so many hands that don't make a lot of sense as well. So this really comes down to just kind of reading your opponent's energy. You're right next to him. Look him up, feel him up. What do you think he wants you to do? That's one of the most important things that poker players don't do these days. They don't even try and get a tell off their opponent. You know, does he look comfortable? Does he feel comfortable? What does he want me to do? And then once you figure out what he wants you to do, which is the hard part, then you do the opposite. That's the trick to poker.
Make it sound easy, sir.
Not so much. I've been wrong more often than I've been right.
Felix Stevenson trying to figure out the puzzle of the bigger stack, and he does fold. Another strong fold here at this table. Van Hoof's crowd with something more to cheer about. So the Dutch chip leader now with over 46.5 million, working on a quarter of the chips in play. There's over 200 million chips in play. And he started a Dutch poker training site. He's got another startup business that provides trainers and yoga teachers to people out there. A very entrepreneurial, smart guy.
Yeah, Dutch poker training site, netterpoker.com. I have a Groupon for it, but it's all in Dutch. It's wasted.
Well, tomorrow night is the night where we will crown a champion, 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Tuesday night, one of these 9 will become the new world champion. Again, we will bring it to you on just a 30-minute delay. Cards face up when a player enters the pot. And I think it really engages the fans in the game more. And so far, the response has been very positive. We brought you the APAC high roller and final table from Melbourne not too long ago, and so bringing the act to Vegas and moving our coverage of poker forward in so many ways.
I like the 30-minute delay as much as the players do. During the break, I go in and find out what Antonio said. I get analysis from my rail on what he meant, and then I come back here and I use it in the booth.
Newhouse made it $1 million with ace queen. Once in a while, Mark gets a real hand.
You know, that's one of the perks of playing a lot of hands, is that when you do get a real hand, people, you know that you're in there a lot of times without a hand, so you're more likely to actually get action. You know, Newhouse is a lot more likely to get action than some of the tighter players at the table.
Is that a cash game strategy brought to tournament poker, or is that something also?
Not necessarily. It's a general, you know, theory of poker, cash and tournament.
It can be more punishing in tournament because you can't rebuy, obviously.
Exactly.
How much you have, Mark? How much? Started with 16. 16? Yeah.
Very similar stacks. Newhouse has Politano covered.
I want to see Politano's his energy a little bit more. I want to see some of that personality. He had so much leading up to this final table. I love to watch him play.
He's going to call from the big blind for 500,000 more with 5-4 of hearts. So he got a discount, so he's going to play it. One heart out there. Ace queen still best for Newhouse. Politano checks. And the crowd is situated differently here. Maybe a lot of his more vocal supporters of Politano are out in the theater further away from him. Hard for him to tap into their energy.
Yep. No, they spent so much money getting here, they couldn't afford to buy the more expensive seats near the final table.
And Newhouse's gang finally was something to celebrate. Mark Newhouse in 6th place with almost 18 million chips. So he has dropped down from the 26 million that he started this table. And you see the young nature of our field, where the oldest player is still only 32 years old.
Yeah, it's only the 3rd time in history where the oldest player has been under the age of 40, and it's all happened in the last 5 years. Sorewin was 37 in 2010. Amir Leovot was 38 in 2013. Bruno, the oldest player this year. The first main event they played, 1971 line, 6 players. Everyone was over 40, except for Doyle Brunson, who was 37. I didn't know Doyle ever was 37.
That shocked me when you said that. I was thinking the same thing. He was just born at 78 years old or whatever it was. Larabe, 24.1 million in 4th place. None of these players own a World Series of Poker bracelet, so in addition to becoming a world champion, they will have won their first bracelet, and you certainly have seen some shots of it worth over $500,000, and the face of it even opens up and it reveals a World Series of Poker black and gold $10 million chip inside to signify the $10 million that they will have won here.
Sounds like you have that bracelet on you right now.
I had it a long time in my hands. Yeah.
In other news, we see another light 3-bet here, and this one is from Sindelar. He's playing very solid. He hasn't really got out of line, and it's very likely that his opponent can fold a wide range of hands. So I love 3-betting in position. If you want to win a tournament, you have to do it once in a while. So whether Larabe had aces or Jack 10, you just once in a while you got to do it and hope that you're right.
And I think Larabe may fold this here, and I got to say by a slim margin through 50 hands. Sindelar's played as well as anybody at this final table.
I would have to agree.
Sindelar in 2nd place with 27.5 million. Stevenson in 3rd place with 24.2. Larabe in 5th with 23 million, just about where he started. And so as you go down the leaderboard, as we mentioned, Jacobson, the short stack. Politano was the short stack, now in 8th place. Billy Pappas has not been heard from in a while, down to 13.6 million.
Billy Pappas here? He's here today?
Exactly.
I thought he was at the final table.
Well, he has been rather quiet, and the one thing he said is he didn't know any of these guys. He got to the 10-handed table, and he didn't know Mark Newhouse had made the final table last year. He says the benefit of not knowing who these guys are was he wasn't intimidated by maybe what more they might know about poker, but he certainly has watched all the shows. He knows the stats of the players now, and perhaps he's sitting there as one guy who can be very intimidated in what can be a very daunting situation. Newhouse open raised with Queen 10 of hearts.
I hope Billy gets going, because he would be a terrific story. He's almost like a latter-day Chris Moneymaker, the only true amateur here. He's really the true everyman, and he would just light up America if he was able to win this thing.
Absolutely. Well, ace king flops a king.
He just called with ace king of spades out of the big blind, by the way. That's pretty strong.
Flush draw for Newhouse with middle pair.
Holy floppage.
And actually Newhouse is the favored player right here, just barely. With the 2nd best hand, but certainly the better draw statistically. So Stevenson now with top pair, top kicker, as Newhouse bets 1.25 million. There's a call.
Boy, there's a lot of scary cards on the turn here for Stevenson.
Another heart, so there is the flush for Newhouse. Stevenson checked like he's already given up the hand.
Yeah, but he's not really too worried about a flush, just because, Newhouse would have continuation bet anything on the flop. The chance of him actually having a flush are pretty slim. So, I would be shocked if he just check folds this turn.
2.9 million Mark announces. That's a strong announcement there. Stevenson now drawing dead.
And, you know, he's got one of the best starting hands. He flopped the king with it. You know, if I'm sitting in his shoes, I can't see Newhouse's cards. He's bet the flop, he's bet the turn. You know, I think I'm calling the turn here just to see what happens on the river. I mean, it's very hard to make a pair, especially when you have ace-king and you make the top pair with the ace kicker.
And Stevenson just run into really tough luck here. That his last couple of hands he's played, that hand against Van Hoof where he gave up a bunch of chips and ended up folding the river. He had a big hand and Van Hoof had a bigger hand. And right here, top pair, top kicker, you got to like on the turn, and he's not going to win this pot.
So drawing dead, he does commit 2.9 million more with top pair. Top kicker, as you mentioned, Norman, and nothing's going to help him except maybe that.
That actually saves him some money.
That's what I mean. That helps him.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Newhouse is, you know, he might go for value bet here. He's got the second nut, but certainly he's not going to bet as much and as confidently as if he had the nut flush. So this might have saved Stevenson. Also, Stevenson can get away from it now much easier.
Mark goes and fires away and said, well, if you got the ace of hearts, you got the ace of hearts, buddy. Still black.
This would be the play of the final table if we see a check raise here.
And that's a high bar right now to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Van Hoof really, that took a lot of heart to do what he did earlier. That's a big moment right here. Big shift in chip stacks. You know, you're third to start the hand and with your chip size.
They'll pretty much switch positions on the leaderboard. Unless Stevenson can somehow push Mark off this flush, queen high flush. Felix Stevenson.
Well, you know, I think what's throwing him off is a lot of players on the turn, if they had a big heart in their hand, they might check back to try and take a free card on the river. But Newhouse bet the turn. So the fact that he bet the turn is throwing Stevenson for a little bit of confusion here, because that means he has to have two hearts in his hand instead of just one big heart.
Newhouse in that very familiar pose.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing he's thinking about is calling here. I mean,
yeah, there's the fold.
Good lady.
Yeah, and Stevenson doesn't know it right now. He's a little suspicious of Mark Newhouse, but he will know soon enough that was a good fold. And once again, some players are getting out with just the skin of their teeth. Mark Newhouse up to almost 24 million and fourth place. Still nine-handed. A lot of money up for grabs, a lot of prestige, including the championship bracelet. Welcome back to Las Vegas and the Rio as we continue our coverage of the 2014 World Series of Poker main event final table. Jort Van Hoof has it going his way back in the leaderboard, atop the leaderboard. Mark Newhouse is coming back as well. He dipped for a while. Billy Pappas doesn't have things going quite the way he wanted, but the crowd certainly enjoying their charges as they watch this final table unfold in the Penn and Teller Theater. The chip leader, Van Hoof, now with over 46 million.
He briefly gave the chip lead to Felix Stevenson early on at this final table, but he's had it almost the entire way. Stevenson, meanwhile, was just second in chips a few minutes ago, but after tough hands against Van Hoof and Newhouse, he's now dropped from second to sixth.
And there you see the chip counts up to date right at the top of your screen. We have whole cards as the players enter the pot face up. As you see, Sindelar raised to 1.1 million with ace-9. The Brazilians trying to get something going from their man, Bruno Politano, but no luck so far. Billy Pappas with 13.3 million, down from 17.5 million to start.
He came to the Las Vegas this summer with all his dealer buddies from Rockingham Park Poker Room in New Hampshire. They were all dealing at the main event through day 3, but they never dealt a hand to Billy. Jim Zeidler, George Aganis, Rich Larivieri, Dave Provencher. His buddies all out here this summer dealing at the main event. And now look, Billy makes it here to November 9.
Billy, look at this. Re-rates at 2.6 million with 7-4 of clubs. Feels he's got to get in the game, got to get something going. Billy's actually dream was to one day deal at the World Series of Poker. He never got that, but here he is, I guess, at the second best seat.
Well, this was a good move at a good time for him. A little pep in his step, and he picks up his first piece of momentum in a while.
I mean, it was a great move. First of all, he's got a lot of built-up squeezer vig, as you very well know. He's been playing very tight, and also Sindelar doesn't like to call 3-bets without premium hands. I mean, he's got that information so far.
Billy Pappas up to $15.5 million as we are about to deal hand number 53. Last year, the first elimination at the final table was Mark Newhouse on hand number 36. So we knew these players had deeper stacks coming in and more chips in play, and some amateurs down towards the bottom, so maybe a little tighter play, and so things have pretty much panned out with no eliminations as we get ready for over 50 hands now.
The smallest thing on the list I'm worried about. What are the big things?
Politano now, seat number 9, just to the right of the dealer.
That's why I asked.
And he will fold to Billy Pappas in seat number 1 to the left of the dealer. He said he enjoys seat number 1. He's kind of a dealer junkie, as he said, or dealer geek, and he likes to watch the dealers work, and seat 1 lets him do that. Being a former dealer himself, he folds. Stevenson back into action on the button. A raise to $1.25 million with King 10. Newhouse makes the call with 5 tray in the big blind. Queen 8-7.
Check.
Everybody whiffs. Boy, it's hard to make a pair.
King high is best. Stevenson, the original raiser. Looks like he wants to continue.
At 1.4.
And Newhouse folded before we even got around to him, and that bet will take it. So Stevenson trying to rebuild from some of the damage that has been done to his stack. I mentioned Ryan Reese earlier, came into the booth, talked to us a little bit. He did the shuffle up and deal to get us off and running. Kara Scott had a chance to talk with Ryan Reese, who's saying life is all good right now, I'd imagine.
Ryan, a year ago we were here, well, I was here. You were actually over there winning this whole thing. So what's it like watching this from the outside?
It's a lot different. When you're sitting down there playing and you're concentrating on the action, you can't really recognize all this other commotion going on with all the fans and all the supporters listening. So it's a lot different listening and seeing it from a different point of view where you're on the outside and you can see all the action and going on. It's really cool.
It's pretty loud in here as well at some point, so it's probably good at the table that you can't really hear that. It must help you focus.
Yes, definitely. At the table, you're mainly focusing on the action. You're not really thinking about the fans and what they're saying and all that stuff. So it's really nice being able to focus on the action, not thinking about all the fans at the same time.
Now talk to me about how it changes your life to be a main event champion.
It's absolutely amazing. You get you travel all around the world and everyone recognizes you as a champion and wants pictures with you and autographs and just wants to talk to you about what it's like. It's really awesome. It's something that I never really expected to happen, and then once it did happen, I'm so incredibly grateful for it.
Well, is there one thing that you would tell the guys who are still here? I mean, we have 9 players still left. Is there one thing that they need to do right now to win this?
Just have fun and enjoy the moment. I feel like a lot of people, when they're in this moment, they think too much about it and they get caught up in the moment almost too much. And you really have to just enjoy it because it's a moment that only comes by, unless you're Mark Newhouse, once in a lifetime. So
once in a lifetime. 2013.
Just enjoy it.
Just enjoy it. And that's advice for you from the 2013 World Series of Poker main event champion, Ryan Reese.
Yes. Seeing Ryan there reminds me, I've always given props to my boys from Maryland, like Greg Merson, who won the main event in 2012. I give short shrift to Michigan. Michigan has produced an incredible amount of main event champions. Russ Hamilton, Tom McAvoy, Joe Cata. Ryan Reese. I might be forgetting somebody. So Michigan is the state of main event champions.
Absolutely.
Plus a pretty bad football team this year.
Wow, a late jab.
Michigan, that is not Michigan State. Michigan State's pretty good. Actually, they just lost to Ohio State. Yeah, all of Michigan's been bad in football this year.
Anything about the Lions?
I don't like the Lions, but boy, are they playing well.
Pull it around to our chip leader. Chip leader's got to do something.
1.1 million.
Newhouse on the button. Von Hof with a raise with Queen 10. And everyone says, you can have it, sir. And he certainly has had it lately. He has been the one to try to knock off the pedestal. He is a very smart player. He pays attention to what's going on around him. He was one of the early guys that you just could see from across the room that he had the mental attitude. He was in the moment. He was paying attention to what was going on the table. And so far, it has paid off. And he hopes it will pay off with a lot of zeros. 10 million for first, a big jump from second to first. So that's going to be an interesting bubble. 5.1 million for second. Nobody gets paid for ninth place, but there is a bump of 216,000 as eighth place pays 947,000. But it's just a matter of surviving right now. It's trying to find the right moments, pick your spots. World champions have come from the back of the pack. There are many ways to win the bracelet.
Raise 1.1 million.
And Van Hof was at the back of the pack a few days ago. It wasn't as extreme as Greg Merson, who had less than 3 big blinds left, but he started day 5 with 13 big blinds. He was 282nd in chips out of 291.
Von Hof with a raise, a call from Newhouse with pocket tens. Will talking now. And everybody has seen that when Will gets involved, Will is pretty serious about what he's got. And that face of Will Tonking is who Will Tonking is. He doesn't fool around. Pre-game interviews, you know, he doesn't want to act as a poser. He doesn't want to try to offer any self-aggrandizement. He's just, you know, almost comes off like a working stiff. This is my game. I'm not doing anything special. But he does have the best hand right now with queens. So
yeah, Newhouse is in a really tough spot. I mean, he's on the button with 2 tens. He just flatted the original raiser, original raise from Von Hof. So, you know, when you have 2 tens to a single raise, you know, you're definitely not getting away from it.
No, that 2 take 100 back. Yep. How much you start with, Mark? 22. Okay.
All right, here we go. Queens against tens.
You know, not to mention the raise was from Tonking, which, you know, should send off some worry bells for Newhouse, because Tonking, as we know, has played very solid so far. So as powerful as 2 tens are, you have to be cautious. But usually they're the best hand.
When I have pocket queens, it seems they put more kings and aces in the deck than ever before. And 2 or 3 of them hit the flop. But Tonking sees 3 undercards out there.
Bet 3.5.
So the only person that Newhouse might actually fold to is Tonking, because this is a pretty standard call on the flop in position, just to see what your opponent does on the turn. You know, you raise pre-flop, you bet the flop. There's a very reasonable chance he could have ace-queen or ace-king. You know, I think against almost anyone else, he's always going to call here in position. But against Tonking, it's a whole different story. So far. I wouldn't be shocked if Newhouse found a fold here.
Call.
But
There's
pretty
a call.
standard.
Yep. And we've seen Newhouse throughout this main event. He's not afraid to put chips into the middle. Another 4 comes out.
Yeah, that's a great card for Tonking. He's not really worried about a 4. So he loves his hand right now. You know, if you think your opponent called you with a very light hand and might bet the turn, you want to check here. But if you think your opponent called you with a hand like a jack, if you think he's going to bet the jack, you definitely want to bet. If you think he's the kind of player that could just check back and have pot control, which most cash game players do, then you obviously want to bet.
Check.
You hear Bruno's cheering section back there. They don't just sit back and wait for something to happen with their guy.
So I don't know what Newhouse is going to do here. You know, going through his mind is maybe Tonking as ace-king, ace-queen. I don't want to let him catch up. So he might make a very small bet on the turn. If he bets, he's not going to bet big.
Was Tonking just letting Newhouse hang himself here? Is that what the check was for?
Yeah, pretty much. He called him on the flop. He's just wants to fire. He just wants him to fire on the turn. You know, he's bet 25% of the pot. Not a massive bet.
Tonking can end it here if he wants to.
He could.
Yes, you can hear me?
But, you know, if you think your opponent is bluffing, you don't want to take that away from him on the river. But there's a lot of bad cards that can come out. So
sure.
4.5 million.
No, that isn't a massive bet by Newhouse, but this pot is starting to build.
Yeah, it's a tough spot here. I don't know what to do. You risk giving your chance a card that might make his hand. You know, if a jack peels off, if a heart peels off, if an ace or a king peels off, it's pretty gross. But you have a very strong holding, and you also, if you raise and get called or re-raised, you kind of have to go with it. So I like the call.
Look at the pot, 25.5 million.
And here, if another dime doesn't go into this pot,
it's a terrible card for Tonking.
Another jack, a double paired board, and
Check.
he's got to think, you know, if Mark's around, Mark's got a piece of the board somewhere, and Mark now has a really big piece of the board.
I mean, Newhouse could definitely have a jack in his hand. So even
all in from bet. Newhouse, and if he's called.
By the way, this is not a value bet from Newhouse. He's bluffing here. He knows he's bluffing. He knows that once Tonking called him on the turn, it's very possible for Tonking to have an overpair.
Tonking has the bigger stack. A call here means Mark Newhouse once again would be out in 9th place.
By the way, I love this play, whether it works or not. It just shows a lot of heart.
It's Mark Newhouse.
He just puts his opponent on a hand and he plays accordingly.
10.2 million.
And that's what you have to do to win at No Limit Hold'em. This is, and the fact that if he gets called, he's out 9th place, which is what happened last year. I mean, this is a lot of heart right here, guys. So
Tonking knows all of that. He calls, and that's going to do it.
It doesn't seem possible.
Oh my goodness! Back-to-back final tables, back-to-back 9th place finishes for Mark Newhouse.
Wow, wow, wow.
What a call, and what devastation again for Mark Newhouse.
Will Tonking somehow found it inside himself to make that call that eliminates Mark Newhouse in 9th place, and Will Tonking is the chip leader. Mark Newhouse, deja vu all over again. There is your main event chip leader, Will Tonking, with nearly 48.5 million chips.
If it wasn't the main event, I was going to snap. I was going to snap if it wasn't the main event.
It sounds like he was calling no matter what. It just, as a matter of fact, it had so much money riding on it. But Will Tonking shocks the world. Mark Newhouse out once again in 9th.